6 aircraft carrier battle groups in the Pacific, 12 around the world. No other country has a single aircraft carrier battle group. And this isn't chump change we're talking about here. Huge amounts of money to maintain these fleets. And it's not just an aircraft carrier. It's destroyers, minesweepers, submarines, the jet aircraft, the helicopters, patrolling the 7 seas against threats to the United States of America. I guess threats from Malaysia, Thailand, Laos, other countries. I know, again, there's some older people who remember the 1960s, particularly here in Seattle, which was subjected to tremendous onslaught from the Vietnamese Navy, aircraft carriers and destroyers and Vietnamese battleships right here in Puget Sound. It was a grim time. And then you'll recall they were joined by military forces from Laos and Cambodia, and they turned the entire country into a free fire zone. There was carpet bombing. American citizens were herded into villages called strategic hamlets. Napalm was dropped on them. Dioxin was dropped on them. Agent Orange. It was a brutal period, and I can see that the laughter evoked exactly what I wanted to happen. But we live in the USA, as Gore Vidal says, and it's not that far-fetched, by the way, for me to say something outrageous to an audience in this country. And really, did that happen? I'm only 21. I don't remember. I don't go back that far. But we live in the USA, as Gore Vidal says, the United States of amnesia, where there is no memory, where there is organized forgetting. And here again is where the media and the academy play such a crucial role in promoting that forgetting. Rather than keeping history alive, we are fed, basically, with some exceptions, a nonstop diet of patriotic mythologies about American history. From Bunker Hill to Never Told a Lie, to, cutting down the cherry tree, to all the rest of U.S. history, to the good war, to Afghanistan, which has been called a just war by Barack Obama, who did fulfill his campaign pledge to expand the war in Afghanistan, and he didn't fulfill the campaign pledge about expanding the war, which he's done greatly, to Pakistan, where there's been more drone attacks, bomb attacks, in the first 2 years of the Obama administration, yes we can, than in the entire period of the George W. Bush regime. Bombings now in Yemen, in Somalia. American citizens are targeted and executed. There's no other word for that. Extrajudicial assassination. Death from the air in these drone strikes or helicopter gunships, which are, again, in an insult to our Native American brothers and sisters and culture and tradition, are called Apache helicopters. Apache helicopters. And when you'll recall when Osama bin Laden was killed, they said that the Navy SEALs radioed back to the White House, "We got Geronimo." No other group, no other group is subjected to this kind of racist denigration than American Indians. A cruise missile is called a Tomahawk, and on and on. There are many, many examples. Still today, the U.S. Army, when it goes out in the field, protecting freedom and democracy, is in Indian country. And Native Americans who are in the military are often called chief or scout, as if that is some sobriquet that they deserve. Let me just get a little bit of water here. How are we doing on time? Alternative radio is on right now. You can jump up and go home and listen to it. I also want to bring to your attention a wonderful magazine called Z, which has one Z fan here. Two. It's got an interview I did here with Pervez Bukhari called Struggle in Kashmir. I think those two interviews really give you a flavor of what's going on in Kashmir. So what happened to me on September 23rd, Mr. Smarty Pants? Well, I got my comeuppance. I landed at Indira Gandhi International Airport in New Delhi, and I submitted my passport, which had multiple entries, a valid visa with multiple entries, and I was almost immediately told to wait here. Something you don't want to hear at an airport, particularly after a 26-hour grueling flight, from Denver to Frankfurt, Frankfurt to New Delhi. This is 1 o'clock in the morning when you're not too chipper and too alert. But I was following what was going on. And pretty soon, 3 or 4 immigration officers came over to me and said those magical words, please come with us. And so I was placed in a room, and I, wanted to know, well, what was going on. I have a valid visa. They took my passport. They could see that I had a visa. And then one of them came over to me and waved a piece of paper in my face and saying, we have an order from the government of India denying you entry. And I could see that the Lufthansa flight number was on there. I could see my name, and I could see the word banned. And so I asked, in a nice way. Actually, we were pretty jocular and friendly because I can speak Hindi, and they were Hindi speakers. So right away I had a kind of access to them, and they were friendly, and they said, David Saab, really this is out of our control. This is a government order. We ourselves don't know why you are being denied entry, which was in fact true. And so they grabbed my baggage off the carousel, went to the Lufthansa counter. This is a particularly painful aspect of being deported because I got to pay for my own deportation. They used my return ticket. They grabbed my bags, went back to the gate with my bags, and then put me on that return flight. To date, today is the 9th of November, I have still had no explanation from the government of India as to why I was prevented from entering the country. A country, incidentally, I've been visiting since 1966, and a country that I have had deep cultural and personal ties to and miss very, very much. And I'm quite worried, frankly speaking, the only way to speak, right? I hate that when I just did that. To be candid or to tell you the truth. I mean, come on, please. Department of Redundancy Department. A friend in California was banned a year ago from entering India, and he has still received no explanation as to what happened. Just a few weeks before I was prevented from entering India, a Philippine human rights activist, May Aquino, who was interested in this issue of the missing and the disappeared and the mass graves in Kashmir, she too was stopped at the airport in New Delhi and turned around. There is now, even in the world's largest democracy, internal deportations. That is to say, Indian citizens themselves are prevented from traveling to other parts of the country. Imagine if you were here in Washington and you wanted to go to Oregon, and at the border or at the airport at Portland, you'd be turned around. This happened to a journalist, someone I know and respect highly, Gautam Nolaka. He flew to Srinagar, the capital of Kashmir, and he was put back on a plane. You cannot enter. More and more states are clamping down on dissent, on journalists in particular, who shine the light on areas that states do not want light to be shined on. And I got it pretty easy. I came back, as I told someone, with all my fingernails intact. My hair wasn't pulled out. I wasn't given electric shock. I didn't have any welts on my back from torture. I'm, privileged, fairly privileged. But not the case, let's say, for 15 Honduran journalists who have been murdered in the last 19 months, or the many Mexican journalists who have been murdered by the drug cartels in Mexico. It's a very, very dangerous profession, and it's getting more dangerous with the passing of time. Next week I'm going to New York. I'm going to be meeting with the Committee to Protect Journalists who have taken an interest in my case. But, in the hierarchy of this kind of repression, I'm pretty much, I'm small potatoes. It's not really significant. There are many more people who are suffering greatly in trying to get the word out. And trying to get the word out, I have some good news for you. I arrived in Bellingham, Washington, my first visit actually to Bellingham, with 20 packs of alternative radio CDs, 4 particular programs that I picked out. They featured Pervez Bukhari on Dateline Kashmir, the journalist I mentioned in Kashmir, Richard Wolff, The Systemic Crisis of Capitalism, and Capitalism Hits the Fan, the very program that's on this moment on KUOW, and the terrific Chris Hedges. As much as I say that the media are deplorable, there are some terrific people working out there, and Chris Hedges is certainly one of them. And it's an interview I did with him in Santa Fe called Empire Abroad, Tyranny at Home. And it turns on a very interesting thesis that Hedges advances. And, he's a classically trained scholar, and he knows, Greek and I believe Latin as well. And he talks about Thucydides, the Greek historian, who, someone knows Thucydides here? We have a Thucydides fan in the audience, in town. If people had read that, there would have not been an invasion of Iraq. Thucydides lamented what had happened to Athenian democracy, and he attributed the decline of Athenian democracy to the behavior of imperial Athens outside of its borders, where it rampaged and looted and committed numerous, wasn't called human rights violations, but what we would call human rights violations, imposed their rule on subject races and peoples, and then turned around and imposed many of those restraints and constrictions on its own population, undermining the very foundation of Athenian democracy. So what goes around comes around, and we're seeing that actually right now with I made reference earlier to free speech being under attack, right of free association, right of assembly, right of due process, right of habeas corpus, a number of freedoms. Look at the Occupy movement, let's just say in Denver a couple of weeks ago, sitting on public property and attacked by the police and removed from public land, denying them the right of assembly. It may have happened in other places as well. It did? Did someone say it did happen? It did. It happened in Westlake Park. It happened in Oakland, where citizens are being denied the right to protest. And as this movement grows and expands, I think you're going to see more and more police repression trying to curtail it and to limit it. So to get back to these CDs, what happened in Bellingham was pretty amazing. They all sold out. And so what I'm doing tonight, there's a form over there. I'll be happy to send you these 4 CDs. They're 1-hour programs. Make as many copies as you want. I don't believe in copyright. And get the word out. And we're offering the CDs for just $20. If you ordered them from Boulder, it would be, $60, $70 and everything else. So it's 20 plus, I think, 3 for postage. There's a sign-up sheet over there. As soon as I get back to Boulder on Friday, I'll get on my CD burner, start making copies. Alternative radio, as you know, is a huge media monopoly. It has an enormous staff of 3, myself and 2 others, and we occupy that word, a huge space of some 400 square feet. I urge you all, when you come to Boulder, give me a call or send me an email. I'd love to take you on a guided tour of the estate Sign up early. You know, holiday season's coming, buses leave and are packed. We want to make sure you get to see the entire alternative radio space from where these radical ideas stem from. So I'm going to end now. That's an applause line. Actually, I'm getting a little warm here. Did I wear enough black tonight? I'm worried when I come to Seattle, I don't have enough black on. I don't want to stick out. Anyway, this is a t-shirt which I actually got here years ago. I'll hold it up close to the microphone so you can all see it, so those radio listeners can see what I'm doing. It says Imperialism's Greatest Hits. And on the back, there's a laundry list of countries the U.S. has invaded or overthrown: Chile, Nicaragua, Dominican Republic, Laos, Cambodia. The list is very long. In fact, if the list were complete, it would be here to Bainbridge Island. But it's because this is a T-shirt, it is rather limited. And let me tell you something about American history and the media. Not that you need to hear it, but this amnesiac quality that extends to the most elite and sophisticated program. I'm talking about the NewsHour on the PBS network, sometimes called the Petroleum Broadcasting System, because Chevron is its largest advertiser or underwriter, another euphemism, as is ExxonMobil, incidentally. And Jim Lehrer, who's a very senior journalist, he's no rookie, he's no green kid, he's a very well-respected journalist, and I think one of the reasons people like that program and listen also to NPR is that people are very polite. Welcome to the program, Joe. Great to see you again, Jim. Good to see you. Good to be back. People speak in complete sentences and are allowed to speak. There's no yelling. There may be just a hint of a little bit of acrimony or rancor, but it's immediately glossed over with, we may have our differences, Bill, but, after all, we're Americans. We're part of this great country, the fabric of, the free world, yada, yada, yada. Again, I can see from your grins and chuckles that this resonates a little bit with you. So, Lehrer makes this statement to Donald Rumsfeld, arguably one of the major war criminals of modern times, that it is a fact, I am quoting, it is a fact that the United States of America has never attacked any country. It has always acted in self-defense. Now, I was so stunned, and I was watching this, I was so stunned when I heard this, I said, I didn't hear that. I got the transcript from PBS, and indeed, those were his words. You have to wonder what planet this guy inhabits, what universe he's in. Forget about planet, what galaxy he's in. I mean, to say something like that, given the history of the United States, particularly since 1945. I mean, the United States is not particularly evil or worse than any other imperial power. It does things, it carries out its agenda around the world in the, the prosecution of wars and the acquisition of resources and accumulation of wealth. It's not any different. And, also on Jim Lehrer and others on NPR and other media programs, Keith Olbermann, Rachel Maddow, they have people on like Robert Kagan and Neil Ferguson and Max Boot, who wax eloquent about the glories of empire, both past and present. And will nitpick here and there, the U.S., maybe it shouldn't have invaded Iraq. Maybe it should have paid more attention to a different part of the Middle East. So you have that kind of, thing going on. All right, so Lehrer does that. We're going to close with Gil Scott-Heron's The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. Gil Scott-Heron, one of the great poets of this era, the progenitor of hip-hop and rap, died earlier this year. And this particular poem is always recited to Dizzy Gillespie's Night in Tunisia. So I'll just do a little hip-hop rap here. You'll not be able to stay home, brothers and sisters. You'll not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out. You'll not be able to lose yourself on Star Trek reruns, skip out for beer during commercials, because the revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by J.P. Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, or Wells Fargo in 4 parts without commercial interruptions. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by CBS, PBS, NPR, CNN, MSNBC, or Fox, and will not star Julia Roberts and Tom Hanks. The revolution will not give your mouth sex appeal. The revolution will not make you look 5 pounds thinner. The revolution will not get rid of zits that you may have, because the revolution will not be televised. The revolution will be televised. MSNBC, ABC, NBC will not be able to predict the winner at 8:01 of the election. The revolution will not be televised. You'll not be able to have to worry about your iPhones, iMacs, iTunes, iPads, iClouds, or iPods, or no time for sorrow. The revolution will not be televised. The theme song will not be written by Barry Manilow or Justin Bieber or sung by Lady Gaga or played by Kenny G. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be right back after a message about a whiteout, white chocolate, or white people. The revolution will not go better with Coke. The revolution will not fight the germs that may cause bad breath. The revolution will put you in the driver's seat. The revolution will not be televised, not be televised, not be televised. The revolution will be no rerun, ladies and gentlemen. The revolution will be live. Thank you very much. And if you'll indulge me, poder al pueblo, power to the people. We have a little bit of time for discussion, and there's a microphone over here. Yes, sir?
I've taught high school for 37 years. I just retired. Taught American government. And when I asked my students what they liked best about my class, was it radio programs. You know, I played all the movies and all the documentaries, film. Well, actually, a lot of them tried different movies to try to get them interested. Yawn. Documentary movies, pretty good. But the biggest was radio. That was the most powerful. And I taught, my last year I taught AP, honors, and just regular American government simultaneously. And every one of those classrooms, the students said radio was the most important. So I tell my colleagues, radio is the most important. And they go, oh, that's good. But they don't listen to radio, so that was the problem. But if they did, and any educators out there, just try it. Try it. You'll get 100% participation.
The question I wanted to ask you was, one of the controversies in the Occupy movement has been about the role of the police. Are the police part of the 99%? What does that mean? So I was just wondering what your comments on that are.
Earlier, someone had asked me a similar question. And I think, the police are part of the working class. Many of them are union members, in fact, if I'm not mistaken, here in Seattle. Is someone nodding in affirmation of that? Are they, in fact, union members? Is the police force unionized here? Yeah, in many communities they are. Public sector workers are unionized, firefighters and police as well. I think what would be a disaster for the Occupy movement is if it abandoned nonviolence and civil disobedience and engaged in violent activity. Because why? First of all, the state has a monopoly on violence. No matter what you may use. If you use a pistol, they'll use a machine gun. If you use a machine gun, they'll use a mortar. If you use a mortar, they'll use a tank. They'll just keep ratcheting up the level of firepower and velocity, lethal velocity. And so that would be, I think, a huge tactical error, and it would play right into the hands of those who are only too anxious to label the occupiers as violent anarchists. We already know that, all the slanders about, Woodstock Nation and that kind of thing. So that, I think, would be a crucial mistake. And I think there will be provocation, as we have seen in past decades, as we've seen during the COINTELPRO, that is the counterintelligence movement that was inaugurated in the late 1960s, agents provocateurs, in other words, government agents going into meetings and telling people, hey, let's go bomb the draft board, or let's go blow up a post office, or let's do, this, or let's burn flags. At the moment you hear something like that, your ears ought to go up and just wonder, where is this person coming from? Why is he advocating this kind of thing? And that, of course, caused enormous harm to the different movements that were infiltrated, particularly the Young Lords, the women's movement, the American Indian movement, the environmental movement, and others were largely hollowed out because of those kinds of actions, often caused by government agents. So it's going to take a lot of discipline to resist those kinds of provocations. Do I believe the cops are the enemy? No more than do I believe the military is the enemy. But we have to know who the military are. They are the armed muscle of the state. That's their function globally. And internally in communities, one could say that the police are the armed muscle of the municipality or the city. That's their function, to protect and serve, as so many of them have as their slogan. We would like to see them. And, incidentally, they're being subjected to more and more cuts. It's not just teachers and librarians that are having their budgets cut, but it's also police forces around the country, as well as fire departments. So I think there's a potential for solidarity there. And I don't see, I see what the focus needs to be on the economic system, the barrel, and imperialism as its external expression.